Good morning and welcome, or actually good afternoon, and welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions, brought to you by the Labyrinth Society and with your host, Christiana Brinton. This episode is entitled Labyrinth Around America, a Brit and His Pilgrimage. My guest today is Clive Johnson, who created a labyrinth project that spans the contiguous border states in the USA and will therefore take Clive on a months-long journey of discovery and exploration. Clive, welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on board.
So before we discuss your Labyrinth Around America project, how about giving our listeners a brief summation of your personal labyrinth story? Everybody has one. Anybody who's in the labyrinth community knows everybody has a labyrinth story. So how did you find labyrinths and then what happened?
Well, probably like everyone, it was more or less an accident for me. I didn't have any idea where this great journey with labyrinths would go once I had walked my first one. I used to live and still frequent very often, in fact I'm here today, a city called Brighton and Hove on England's south coast. And every year we have a big festival that goes on in the month of May, and also a fringe festival, which I believe now is actually the third biggest in the world. It's certainly second only to Edinburgh in the UK. And the fringe especially attracts lots of different types of event. Workshops are put on, clowning workshops, you can walk a trapeze and learn to play the drums, and there's comedy and music, of course, and people putting on theatre productions. But there are also some more tranquil and perhaps more mundane things that go on. And I was looking through the huge brochure or prospectus, whatever you would call it, that comes with the festival every year, the Fringe Festival every year. And I noticed a listing for a labyrinth walk at a local church to me. And I was intrigued and thought, well, this sounds rather interesting. I think it was free to attend. It was a simple description, but sufficient to draw my attention. Candlelight, live music with singing bowls, I think it was. And it was around a time when I was discovering meditation. I was on a meditation course at the time, which actually I found quite difficult initially, mainly because I wanted to know all the answers and what this meditation was all about. And the gentleman who was leading that actually gave me some wonderful advice. Was, well, Clive, can you, for the next 8 weeks of this course, just put your books away? Just trust the process. Just come along and see what happens. Then you can go away and read as many books as you like. I'd also, at the time, just been introduced to transcendental meditation as well, which is still my daily practice. So I was very interested in what labyrinth walking was all about. I knew very little about it. And sure enough, this was an absolutely magical event. It was held in an absolutely beautiful church called All Saints in Hove, which is almost a mini cathedral. It's a wonderful Gothic building. So as soon as you walk in, and all the chairs had been cleared in this very wide nave, and there was a full 12-ring Chart-style labyrinth with candles flickering around it. And it was just such a wonderful experience. I wanted to find out more, and happily the organizers had anticipated that and provided good information for folks to follow up. I learned that a new group was starting, which was going to meet at breakfast time every Tuesday morning, using a much smaller labyrinth, a 5-ring labyrinth, which was followed. The walk was followed by a time of just coming together, reflecting, and just socializing, really, chit chat. So I joined that group and became hooked on that. I became a real regular. I attended for many years. The group is still very active. Since I've been in Brighton in the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've been able to go along. And many of the same faces are still there, plus quite a few new ones as well. It's really just grown. And I think partly also through the support and encouragement of other people who were in that group, which now includes, I think, no less, including myself, 5 or 6 Viriditas trained facilitators, which is quite a reasonable number for a church in the UK city. There was a lot of interest and knowledge in the labyrinths. The actual creator, the gentleman who started this and is now a very good friend of mine, John Waters, had lived in San Francisco for a year or two, and it was through the labyrinth at Grace Cathedral that he'd become introduced to labyrinth walking. And so he brought a lot of good experience and wisdom with him as well. And it's just gone from there. I wanted to become trained at some point. I started very informally holding walks, particularly when John was away, for the Tuesday morning group, which tended to be regulars and quite familiar. So a relatively safe group, as it were, to facilitate. And it was only last year that eventually I came to take the Viriditas course in Houston, which happened at the time of the Labyrinth Society gathering last October. I think it was October or November time. Must have been November, actually, early November. Mm-hmm. And that was a wonderful experience, both attending the gathering and the training as well. So very much continues to be important to me, and I continue to be surprised every time I come to the labyrinth. As I think John said when he was introducing, we always seem to have new people coming to labyrinth walks. This is one of the other amazing things, that even in that relatively small place, it acts as a sort of magnet for new people. Mm. And so there were some new folks walking yesterday, and John said, well, it doesn't matter if this is the first time or the 1000th time you're walking. We are all here to have our own experience. So I think that's one of the most magical things about it, that it really doesn't require any knowledge. It doesn't demand anything about your background, your qualifications, your skills. It's available and accessible to everybody.
Great story. It will definitely resonate with so many people out there. It's a familiar theme, and even though everything, the specifics are always different, but the theme and how it's just like the labyrinth. It just grabs a hold of you and just flows you down a pathway that is completely suited for you. I don't know how it happens, but
absolutely,
it's pretty wild. Yeah. So you have this labyrinth walk that you love very much, that you participate in all the time there. And I've seen some of the photos of some of the labyrinths that you've taken pictures of in the UK. And they seem to be all over the place. And I know that you live or in east of London on the coast. So tell us a little bit about some of your favorite labyrinths and
sure.
Yeah, over there.
Yeah, I have a kind of quite a strange existence at the moment. My base address, such as I need one for bank statements to go to and things like that, is my mother's house, actually, and she lives in Essex, to the east of London, As it happens, it's literally about 2 miles from Jeff and Kimberly Saywood.
Oh.
So again, I think they will have welcomed a number of Labyrinth folk, so that's a kind of a bit of a marker. I actually don't know Jeff and Kimberly very well at all. I've only met them once, believe it or not. It's partly because I'm moving around a lot, I think. But so I call myself a nomad. I spend a lot of my time pet sitting, so looking after different people's homes when they're away, and looking after animals and making sure plants are watered and things are kept in good order, and maybe there's something in the fridge when they return, that sort of thing. So that does mean I get to travel around quite a lot. Mainly at the moment it's been within the UK and near Europe, particularly in France. There's no reason particularly I won't extend beyond that. It's been limited at the moment in terms of a lot of the places I go to needing a car when I'm there to move around. So if I can take my own car, that's a real advantage. So yes, my favourite labyrinth, of course, I guess is my home, what I call my home labyrinth here in Hove. Actually, they now have 3 separate labyrinths in the church, all of them canvas, which come out at different times and are used for different purposes. There's a 7-ring one which is now used. They're all based on the shark pattern, which is now used for the Tuesday morning meditation group. That came into being partly because the old one was beginning to get a little bit worn, but also because we were having more and more people coming to the morning walks. The original Tuesday morning one, which is I think a 5-ring one, is used for occasionally brought out, perhaps particularly this time of year when in summertime a lot of people are away. It's easier to clear space for it, and it just gives it a good airing. And it's also used by a number of folks, particularly those of us who are facilitators, for very occasionally taking outside. John, for example, does a lot of work in the corporate field using the labyrinth. And I know others do as well. I recently had an opportunity to take it to a conference just north of Madrid, which was on the subject of mindfulness in the workplace. So that's quite a portable labyrinth.
And how many circuits? How many circuits is that?
That's only 5.
Okay. That's easy.
Yeah, it's quite small.
I got it.
Yeah. And the big one, the original one that I saw, comes out now typically 4 times a year, and I'm not quite sure of the reason, other than this. It's as good a reason as any to have it at the time of the solstices and the equinoxes.
Yeah.
And so it's a big job. The whole church has to be cleared. You need volunteers to put chairs back.
So it's a full size 11 circuit.
That's a full size. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, candle drum. It's yeah, not something you can do every week. Without,
no.
A lot of hands on deck.
But I've seen some beautiful outside ones that you've taken photos on. Oh, okay.
Yes. I guess my home area, which is the southern part of what's called East Anglia, is quite a good area of the UK for labyrinths. There are a number there. Saffron Walden is a particularly well-known one. There's one in Ely Cathedral, which I think has featured on the Labyrinth Society Facebook group recently. It's a very interesting, angular, quite small, almost like a Roman type labyrinth.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
As you go into the cathedral, the cathedral itself is stunning as well, particularly for its windows and crypts and things. And I think probably the one I really like, and again I I actually came across, someone shared a video of Norwich Cathedral the other day, which is one of a number of cathedrals that still has an outdoor, in this case, turf labyrinth in its, I guess you call it the cloisters, just to the side of the cathedral where the monks and so on would have lived. And actually, there was a very nice little video which I shared on the Labyrinth Society page the other day. It was one of these very cleverly shot, I guess, with a drone or something, doing lots of zooms and dives from a height, and quite cleverly put together, which featured amongst other things the labyrinth there. So that's a particularly nice one. I think sometimes when you stumble upon a labyrinth that which you're not expecting, that's something which is always a real joy. One that I posted on recently, I only came across, and this is in the Brighton area, particularly where I am in East Sussex, is not a stronghold, if that's the right word, for labyrinths. At least I don't personally know of many. But there was a wonderful opportunity recently. A lady that you may know of, Margaret Rainbird, from Australia, who is traveling the world at the moment. And she is aiming to visit a different labyrinth or walk a different labyrinth every day through an entire year. So, as a fellow kind of pilgrim, as it were, labyrinth nomad, it was wonderful. We had a chance to connect, and she was able to spend a little bit of time in Brighton and in this area, and that gave me an excuse to hop in the car and go and discover one or two new places. So there was one just down the road in a park which I didn't know about, and actually when we arrived we couldn't see it. It was in a place called Saltdean, just to the east of Brighton. And I asked a man walking his dog, "Do you know the labyrinth here?" Tried to explain what a labyrinth was. He didn't have a clue what I'm talking about. He said, "Oh yes, there's something they've done with strange mowing pattern over there." And we couldn't see it from the angle where we came to the park. We actually had to go to a certain point where you could see it. And I think that sort of thing happens quite a lot. You just are told there's a labyrinth somewhere and you can't quite pinpoint it. It's not necessarily on the Worldwide Labyrinth Locator. And so it might be secondhand knowledge, it might still be there, it might be gone. And somehow you find them. So that's always a joy.
It's always, isn't it, when you come around the corner and you see that, and it's like, oh, look, it's kind of, to me, it always takes my breath away,
Exactly.
Because you didn't, even though somebody's told you, but you don't know, and it's never exactly what it looks like. You think it's going to look like. It always looks amazing. It always looks like a part of the landscape. It's really fun doing that kind of stuff. I know.
Exactly. And Margaret told me one or two others that she visited that I didn't know about. So
you got a list.
That's often the case. Well, indeed. So as often happens, it takes a visitor to force you to get out and explore your own area a little bit more. I love Chart, of course, and where I lived in Brighton was within a relatively easy range of getting to Chart, although I've only really been there 2 or 3 times. I organise what has become pretty much an annual trip from the church at All Saints to Chart, although I think they've gone elsewhere in recent years because of things going on in France. Labyrinth being closed or whatever, I'm not quite sure. And actually organising 15 people to do a trip like that, which I know Verodysis do very well, and Lisa Moriarty runs an annual pilgrimage there, I think.
Yeah, there's a few people,
It does take actually some effort to do, because everybody has their own needs for accommodation, and perhaps changing plans and arranging transport and all this sort of thing is always interesting. I think we've nailed it down now.
Good. Good. I think the hardest part is dealing with the French authorities, the church authorities, but maybe it's changed over the years. I mean, I know
Ah,
when I first did my Veritas training and was over there as a facilitator and a participant, it was and that was with Canon Legault. I mean, yes, Canon Legault, who was fabulous. And then he left, and another group came in, and they were much more stricter. So it goes and comes. Sometimes they're very
yes.
conservative, and sometimes they're very, and you have to sort of. But I think Veritas has it down now, and I'm sure Lisa does too. I haven't ever gone with her.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure. I think what Lisa does is actually a walk from Paris. I think it's a
Yes.
women's group, 6 or 7 women. It's quite a small, deliberately quite small group,
Yeah.
and it's a carefully chosen route as well.
Yeah.
So Chartres, it really is it sounds like a wonderful sort of pilgrimage experience.
Yeah.
That they come finally to Chartres.
Yeah.
My experience going there has always been, I think, Friday morning or Friday afternoon or something, when it's open through most of the year, 9 months of the year, something like that.
Yeah. Just want that
Normally,
one day. Yeah.
on one day a week.
Yeah.
And again, if you go at the wrong time and it's very busy, there are rules almost around. Well, you can walk one way. Don't stay in the center too long.
Yeah.
Come straight out.
Really, yeah.
So the trick is, if you're going first time, go at lunchtime, because as I know, when I'm in France, that's the time you spend having some good food.
Yeah.
So the cathedral is generally going to be at that time. And last year was my first visit to Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And for me, actually, going to Grace was, having heard so much about it, and particularly John, who I mentioned at the church here, having connections with the cathedral there. That was very special as well. And I absolutely love Grace. I think, quite apart from the Labyrinth, I think it's a beautiful cathedral and a wonderful testament to the city of San Francisco, with its murals and its chapel dedicated to the aid community. I think it is.
Yeah.
It really is a very special place.
It is.
And it has an outdoor labyrinth as well.
Yes, yeah, that's where I did my training. It was fabulous.
Oh, wonderful,
and
wonderful.
Yeah, the outdoor labyrinth is used by the Asian community. They do their Tai Chi on it. It's wonderful. You come up there and you're 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're doing their form. And at least they used to. At least they used to.
I remember when I went there last year at the outdoor labyrinth, there was a dog who apparently was quite a regular on the labyrinth. Walking around the park.
That's wonderful. So let's get to your Labyrinth Across America project. Let's talk about, because everybody here was so excited to have you visit and loved having you visit. I actually stopped and saw Siddell, Wilshire in Vermont on my way down when I was up there, and we talked about it a little bit. So when did you come up with your date? So here you have gotten into this labyrinth community and found out all about this. How did it evolve to this idea for a Labyrinth or Across America project? And how did you go about implementing it? I mean, it's one thing to think, oh, that would be fun, and another to get the people.
Sure. Well, it all started in Houston, really.
Okay.
Both with the gathering and also with the training, which followed hot on the heels. In the training, our particular group were very fortunate. There were two ladies, Catherine McLean and Tracy Crowing, who were able to stay, actually. I think Catherine was traveling back to Florida, where she's based, a day or two after the gathering. So she was able to come and join us for a day. And she brought a labyrinth, which we also ran a session around at the gathering called the World Peace Labyrinth, which I think was modeled on one used at the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics. And I was deeply inspired both by quite a lot of what I'd heard at the gathering and the enthusiasm of people I met. There's people like Mark Healy there, and Reginald Adams, and Tom Vetter, you know, people with tremendous enthusiasm and passion. And at this, my eyes were totally open to how labyrinths are being used, and different types of labyrinths, and all manner of things, really. It was just a wonderful experience. But on the training course, these two ladies, Tracy had taken a labyrinth to France, a portable labyrinth to France, and had, I can't remember the full story, but she had actually set this up in various places. She'd asked, you know, permission, can I put this out in your backyard, sort of thing. And I can't quite remember what the purpose was, but that I thought was very inspiring. And Catherine's work in Florida is truly remarkable. She's a remarkable woman. I think you've had her on the podcast before,
Yes.
I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Work she's doing in Florida, which just seems to keep growing. And I was very fortunate to connect with her afterwards. I was very interested in some work she'd done for her doctorate of ministry, a thesis, which was around using the labyrinth for building beloved community. And I also had heard about the work of Emily Simpson in Australia. And again, a single individual with a vision who had, through sheer passion and perseverance, brought a lot of people together to make something really wonderful happen with the labyrinth in Centennial Park in Sydney. So some wonderful kind of role models there in terms of showing what individuals can do if they have passion. The training occurred at the time of the election results last year, presidential election.
Yes.
And I came into the class and found people on both sides, really, but there certainly were a number of people who were in a real state of shock and a real state of disbelief and troubled. And having experienced something not dissimilar myself in my own country with the Brexit vote a few months earlier, which, you know, came as a shock to the system to a lot of people. It just struck me, well, the labyrinth is something that doesn't ask any questions about politics. It doesn't ask any questions about religion. It doesn't ask any questions of you, your background, you know, rich or poor. It makes no judgment. And it's a wonderfully inclusive space for people to come together. So I don't quite know how this idea comes from. It comes from what I believe is, you know, divine. You know, it's kind of inspired. But the idea came to, how about taking a labyrinth around the US? And the idea of going around the border states came to me as well. I'm not entirely sure quite where that came from, but it's a kind of container, this idea of doing a circle ultimately, and linking in different places, different states, people. They will just come, they will just walk, so it will be kind of passing connections, really. That was the vision. I sat with it for quite a while, meditated on it over the next few days. It was actually in Grace Cathedral, I think, where I really came to a clear decision. Actually, when I walked the labyrinth there, I was the only person walking the labyrinth into the center. And I spent some time at the center and had a sense that this is kind of the message I was getting was, well, I'm in a situation where I can actually do this at the moment. I'm not overflush with funds, but I have enough to pay for the odd trip across the Atlantic and kind of look after myself, and my lifestyle, you know, is a nomadic one anyway. So I have flexibility. I don't have family dependents and so on to look after, or a 9-to-5 job. You know, I write and I do audio work and various things that are give that kind of flexibility. So kind of the question that came to me is, well, why wouldn't I, you know? And if it's not me, it's going to be somebody else. So combined with this inspiration of, folks who'd done wonderful things with the Labyrinth, and still on a high after my few days in Houston, I really seemed to have this confirmation when I was in San Francisco. When I came out of the Labyrinth, it started to really fill up. Now, I don't know if that's significant, but it spoke to me, that this was right. I'd also played with the idea of, well, should I do this around the UK? And particularly following the Brexit vote, is there scope for doing that? Or should I do it around Europe, for example? In many ways, that would be much easier for me. I could take my own car, it probably wouldn't be as costly to do. But that didn't feel right. The whole project really has been driven by feeling and going and doing what is right.
Wow. That sounds, what's interesting to me, Clive, is what you say that, if it's not you, it'll be somebody else. And it's been my experience in the 20 plus years that I've been involved with Labyrinths that it really is you. There isn't anyone else. That's it is that person. The Labyrinth taps on that person's shoulder and says, this is what you're meant to do. This is when you're meant to do it. And we, in that time space, and I've had these experiences myself, I was like, what? I can't do that. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
I can't. And then the bridges open, the doors open, the locked doors open, and the river flows through, and you get just swept up the river, the Labyrinth River, and it opens doors, and it just keeps opening and opening. When you say yes, it just goes. So.
Absolutely.
So
there's no way. There's no way you take on something. Well, I don't think I would take on something like this if I sat down and thought about it logically. How much is this going to cost?
Right.
How much time is it taking? I'm not earning money from this. I should be saving, or certainly not spending money, and all those sorts of things. And what on earth am I doing with it? With time, you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But it was very much driven by feeling, as you say, and then you just go with the river, and it really does take you to amazing places.
And once you said yes, then who did you talk to? What was the next step? How did you get to Minnesota and Lisa?
Yes. Well, it probably took me a month or two before I really had done a little bit more homework in terms of how might this work, and what I might need to do before committing to it. So I thought having a reasonable website set up and some sort of somewhere to point people to that came to walks, who were newcomers, who perhaps wanted to follow up, and because this is a tour essentially, and it's one night only in your particular place, to be able to refer them to. Well, now we have the 365 experience as an example, or the Labyrinth locator, and other resources that are available on TLS websites and elsewhere. So that started, the idea of putting together a website started shaping my ideas, because you have to think about the content, of course. And I'd also started researching having a labyrinth made, which was by far the biggest cost, the biggest commitment. Once that decision was taken, it kind of was, it was kind of the point, well, this is going to happen. So I put out a few feelers to a number of folks, and Lisa came back very quickly, and I just loved the work she did, actually. And what she was proposing as well was a material that is quite forgiving of being outdoors. It can be indoors, it can be outdoors. It's a kind of acrylic material, a bit lighter than the type of canvas that I'm used to, but seemingly as durable, in fact, probably more durable because you can walk on it, in your shoes, for example. And so, having thought through some of the practicalities, that could this be wheelchair friendly, for example? Yes, hopefully it can go outdoors as well as indoors. That was another aspect. Cost came into it as well, and Lisa was competitive. But again, she was absolutely the right person for me, because, well, I think that Minnesota was the right place to start for all sorts of reasons. Which was a if you're looking at it from a rational point of view, it was a real bonus. But Lisa was just so supportive right the way through the design of the labyrinth, putting it together and showing me how it was coming together. And when I got to St. Paul, the Twin Cities, hosting me, right from the very start, and helping to set up the first, I think, 5 walks were all set up by Lisa, and having the maker of the labyrinth there to tell you how to fold it up was a real plus as well. Right. And of course, she gave me a wonderful tour, or at least a part of it. There's so many labyrinths in the Twin Cities and around that.
On her property, right?
Well, I didn't actually go to Stillwater. We were.
Oh.
No, we're mainly within the Twin Cities area, but yes,
okay.
she does have, I believe. But no, amazing. Not just labyrinths that she'd worked upon.
Yeah.
But others as well. A lot in public places, in hospitals, in university grounds. In the main park there's a wonderful labyrinth which is designed with the symbol of the Twin City of St. Paul, which I think is a Japanese city, and various other ones that we visited. Yes, there's plenty just within a few miles. And again, that was one of the reasons why the Twin Cities really, I didn't realize at the time, but my goodness, if you're going to start the tour like this anywhere, start it in terms of the number of labyrinths per capita, as it were, within a relatively small area. That really has to be way up the list of number 1, probably on the list of cities there. Plus, it's kind of almost, not quite, but it's in a sort of 12 o'clock position if you look at the US map. Mm-hmm. It's on the Mississippi, pretty much the northern part of the navigable part. It's between the plains and the forests to the north. It's on the 45 degree of latitude. It's very close to, and this is a man-made thing, the 90 degree west line of longitude. There are important ley lines there. It's headwaters for lots of different rivers to all parts of the country spread out from there. So all of these things I discovered. This was a kind of a perfect place really to begin.
Plus it's the founding location of the Labyrinth Society.
Yes, and I believe even before, the likes of Gene Houston, I believe, was doing a lot of work in Minnesota, and certainly one of the many wonderful people I met when I was there, a lady called Marilyn Larson, who has created a number of labyrinths, and she's an artist primarily, but she was connected with some of the work that Gene Houston was doing way back when, in the 80s, I guess. Yeah. And I had a wonderful opportunity to visit Marilyn, and she showed me some of her amazing creations, artwork, paintings, wall labyrinths she created in the shape of butterflies and so on, and told some wonderful stories. So yes, a great place to start. A lot of labyrinth luminaries, if that's the right word. At least there. Tom was one of them. Tom Vetter, MJ, Lisa, of course. So yes, there's a lot of good reason for starting there.
Yeah. So let's talk about the design of the labyrinth. What did you pick? Did you talk to Lisa about this, and what did you decide upon, and why, And you know, I've seen pictures, but I'm curious to know, out of all, because she does a lot of different designs, why that particular one?
I think it stood out very strongly from the photographs I saw. It's, for me, it is a very beautiful design. I was thinking also of the practicality of people walking, both in terms of numbers, potentially if we had a lot of people walking at once. While I know it said, you know, the labyrinth is a metaphor, and you can have lots of people, and crossing your paths and all and so on is all a part of the walk. I personally don't particularly like walking labyrinths when there are 50 or 60 people on them, particularly if you're coming back, because you're spending a lot of time taking notice of other people rather than necessarily allowing your meditation, whatever it is, your flow to go with you. So there was a little bit of a personal bias there. But I thought if I had many people, it would be good to have a design like the Baltic design, which is basically what the labyrinth is based on, where you have a separate exit, or at least have the option of a separate exit to a separate entrance. I always say to folks, there's no rules at all about how you walk this, but this is the suggestion, that you go in this way and you come out this way, but by all means come back the other way if you want, come back the way you came if you want to. It's also got some very nice sweeping curves on it. So again, if you have someone who has some mobility problems, I think it's a little bit easier to navigate, as it were, than a Chart style, medieval style, with lots of twists and turns. And it doesn't have the symbolism of the Christian labyrinth, and I wanted this to be something which is universal. It's something which can speak to anyone, and plus the fact it has a wonderful big center space. And again, perhaps this was based on my own preferences. I often just like to spend time at the center, sitting down, kneeling down, or whatever, and just, again, thinking of practicalities. If quite a number of people were walking, it's just wonderful to have that space. And Lisa's design, there is some symbolism in it, which became, and everybody finds their own, and people have said different things to me as I've gone from place to place of what they've seen in this. Some have seen rivers, for example, but one of the things that strikes me is what I call the trunk, which is kind of the centerpiece of the labyrinth. As you walk in, it sort of separates the entrance and the exit, and branches out to the center. Reminds me of a tree. And in fact, I think Lisa has done designs where there are tree roots on this. It goes down to the earth. The other aspect of it is kind of this huge open arms that kind of hold you. This is how it feels when you get to the center. And Lisa again has a design very, very similar to this called the, oh my god, what's it called? Anyway, that will come back to me. There's something lady. It's gone from my mind. But an absolutely beautiful design of supporting, holding someone. And the Baltic labyrinth, I believe there is a story that its center is sometimes seen to be the womb of Gaia, Mother Earth. So there's this idea of nature supporting you. And what I didn't realize, perhaps we'll get on to this, is that actually was very significant in the labyrinth kind of choosing its own design ultimately. The colors as well, the color for it. Lisa gave advice on that, and she did make some very good suggestions along. So some things quite practical, like, you know, make sure there's a bit of a contrast in case you're in low light and this sort of thing. I didn't know very much about colors. I had attended actually a workshop. I think it was kind of not in the main gathering. It was Karen Kahn or Hahn at Houston, and again a wonderful, enthusiastic labyrinth workshop. And Karen had this labyrinth where the colors of the 7 main chakras were painted on it. And some of what we were doing on that workshop was getting a sense of the qualities, if you like, the feelings of different colors and properties and things they represent. So I did a little bit of research around what colors mean, not knowing very much about it. I didn't feel that having something that was too intense, as it were, you know, if you're at the peak of your spiritual journey, you might have something which is a bright orange or gold or something, was going to be, because it does have a real kind of vibrational quality about it, I thought that could be a bit off-putting for newcomers especially, not least for me as well. And similarly, something which was too associated with like a royal, kingly sort of color, purples, that sort of thing, didn't quite feel right either. So we came to this, I'm not quite sure what you call it. It's a greeny.
Yeah, teal green or
teal.
Yeah,
teal. That's the word. Yeah, yeah. It's a lovely, lovely color. Which again, when I researched, that had some special meaning. It's sort of associated with nature, obviously, and you know, being comforted and non-threatening and embracing.
And the heart chakra. I mean, it's green, the heart chakra. So
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it really did seem to be what this labyrinth was about.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, the labyrinth design ultimately chose itself.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
It looks like it has 8 circuits, and you can see where you can get into the center, go the long way and get into the center, and then if you want to just come out on the other side of the form, you know, on one side of the tree, go in and left, or right, whichever way you want to go, and then you can come right out the other way. So I can see how that would really help facilitate the flow if you had a lot of people on it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And actually, from a facilitator's point of view, I've come across this a number of times with this labyrinth. It quite often happens that perhaps you know, folks have walked the labyrinth, they've come out, and we've had a bit of period of silence, and I'm sort of getting to the point of feeling, is this the time to close the labyrinth? And then somebody new arrives.
Yeah.
So if there's still time, it stays open. But
Yeah.
it does give you that flexibility. If you were running a labyrinth, for example, in the Tuesday morning breakfast group, we do have a bit of a time limit. Partly
right.
the church is used for other things, but also we want to have time for breakfast, and people need to go off to their jobs and other activities.
Yeah.
So yeah, come 8:30, someone is, you know, walking around the edge to bring it to a close. And if you have someone in the middle who's got to come or feels they've got to walk the whole way out again, that's that's another factor.
Well, it looks beautiful. I think she's Lisa. Please, I apologize for not knowing the names of your labyrinths, but I think it was like the Baltic Lady, or is the Baltic something? I remember, something like that. Anyway, she's go ahead.
It is wonderful. I will remember it as soon as we get off the call.
Yes, I'm sure. Okay, so let's continue. How long do you think it will take you to finish your pilgrimage? Because you just did a small thing. So you went from Minneapolis, and describe your route, and then you went back home to the UK.
Yes, so far I've only completed one leg from the Twin Cities in Minnesota to Massachusetts.
Okay.
And so I've routed through all of the border states between Minnesota and Massachusetts. So that's what Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and then in New England, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont.
Okay.
Not necessarily in that order. I mean, one of the interesting things about this trip, again, because it's been led by the heart, is that sometimes I've gone back on myself. It's not the sort of route you'd plan if you were doing a grand tour, sort of a grand holiday type road trip. So it's not been a straight line for any by any stretch of the imagination. I'm hoping, and in fact I probably will try to schedule flights this week or next week to come back in early November to continue down the East Coast, probably till around Christmas time. I have no idea where I'll end on that particular leg. Obviously, I have to book a flight back from somewhere, so I'll need to leave the labyrinth somewhere, possibly.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so it's here in the United States somewhere.
Yes. Yes. And at the moment, that's felt absolutely right. This is the purpose of this labyrinth. It's not the purpose for me to bring it back and use it for other things. It's I don't know, it's the energy of people walking it and the places it's going, and the mainland at the moment as well, the container of the mainland. I imagine when the journey is finished, it's possible it will then go to Hawaii and Alaska, possibly.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not sure that I would be the one to accompany it, but having said that, I don't know I'm necessarily the one to accompany it on its whole journey now. I hope that I am, but that's an unknown. So in terms of what's left, there's a long way to go. It's not a project that my background was actually in project management when I worked in the corporate field, and I worked in consultancy, so you had deadlines and budgets and time plan, everything would be worked out. It's not that kind of venture at all. I don't know how long I will take to get from the East Coast over towards Texas. That's probably going to be early part or maybe into the spring of next year. And then over to the West Coast, probably towards the back end of next year. And then slowly moving north again, and then obviously, hopefully back to where we started. So I imagine there are going to be about 4 or 5 trips altogether. And they're going to have to be spread out a little bit for my own financial reasons. Actually to sustain this in a single trip is too expensive.
Yeah, sure.
Plus there are some limitations on how long I can be in the US at any one time, as I have a 6-month visa for up to 6 months a year.
Sure.
And there are some insurance things like that that come into it.
But
yeah.
Well,
so
it's pretty much open-ended. Pretty much open-ended right now.
It is, and again, I have no idea if it will do. It's a rough circle, but whether it will do a few little dog ends and so on to different places along the route, I don't know. That's all to be discovered.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful that you keep, letting the labyrinth lead you. And that being the primary thing, that you're allowing the labyrinth to lead you from your heart. And to me, it was no accident that the color is green, or that greenish color. You're here. You started this because it's about it was right after the election and people were traumatized. You have this beautiful labyrinth that is about nature and spreading the arms coming up, and it's green and it's non-denominational, and so to me it all very much fits. It's so typical of the labyrinth. We stand back and we go, oh, look at that, huh? Wow, and it's all like bip 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 bip. It's just pretty. So that's wonderful that that you're continuing that and you're allowing that to unfold. So tell me that because of that, your experiences must have been really different. So give us some highlights of some of the different states and some of, I mean, I know you must have stayed with Labyrinth people. I know Sadell mentioned it.
Absolutely, and I mean that's been one of the the joys of this as well is being hosted very often by absolutely wonderful people. They've let me stay in their homes. They've given me food. It really is a pilgrimage, and it's much appreciated when I'm trying to tighten the belt as much as I can on this trip. But wonderful to connect with them and to find out what they're doing as well. So there've been many along the way. Barry Gibby, Sadell in Vermont, Kathy Regali, and Laurie Villamere in Massachusetts. Yeah, some absolutely wonderful people. Janice Lewis, of course, in Chicago. #1 ambassador, I think, for Labyrinth and Chicago.
Oh, absolutely.
Brilliant combination.
You got two of them. You got Lisa and Janice. You can't
and Lisa, of course.
Yes.
But there've also been a lot of wonderful kind of people who have perhaps less of a direct interest in labyrinths, although I've come across them that I met along the way. You know, ministers in churches who happened. You know, the labyrinth arrived at just the right time. It fitted in with what they were going through because someone was sick or whatever, and some wonderful stories there. And also hearing the stories of people who created labyrinths in their gardens or have created community labyrinths, and you know, having a chance to meet some of those folks and hear their stories. So that was really wonderful. It's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult to pick out highlights because there really are so many different experiences. I've been in universities, in hospitals. When I was in Western Massachusetts, Kathy and Laurie Villamere were able to set up a visit with my labyrinth to the jail, the project that they're involved in, Northampton Jail in Hampshire County.
Yeah, I interviewed them. Yeah, wonderful. That's great.
Yes, and the library in Holyoke, I think it was, and Grant Park in Chicago, and all manner of places. So a part of the idea has been, and it's been much more than this, of course, but to have at least one kind of sighting or planting of the labyrinth in each place, each city I visited. I've had school children, preschool children coming and walking it, which has been really, really special. I've been able to take it into a primary school, set it up in the school hall, again, for children to walk. In a university in Madison, in Wisconsin. And of course, so many people who've just come along, they've seen the labyrinth, heard about it. Often what I've done has been spontaneous. Here's somewhere, I go and ask, can I put the labyrinth out? Usually, if I can find someone, make sure it's public land. If not, and probably not near where you need too many permits and things. And yeah, the people have passers-by have stopped. You know, they wind down the car windows to find out about it, or wandered over, or come back in some cases. I remember one lady in southern Chicago who came back, Hyde Park area, I think it's called, and I had the labyrinth outside a church, and she said, "Oh, I'm coming back. It's my birthday today. I'm going to give myself time for myself, just to walk." So some lovely experiences like that. But ultimately, I think it's been the people, and my goodness, I mean, they've been what I call miracles, really. Marilyn Larson, the lady I mentioned I met in Minneapolis, told me a story about a project she was involved in many years ago, where they had laid down temporary labyrinths, I think using masking tape or surveyor's flags or something, on a hill bluff in an area where there had been a drought for many months. And no sooner had the last labyrinth been put down than the rains came, and they recorded more water, more rainfall than they'd had in 100 years over a few days.
Wow.
Now, I had very similar experiences with rain. Often when I put the labyrinth out in wild places, it would start to rain after I packed it away. There was another example where I had planned, organized a visit to Concord in New Hampshire, and I was staying in Westfield, Massachusetts at the time. So this was quite a distance to drive. Must have been a good 2-hour drive in each direction. And I'd arranged for the host to call on the Sunday morning. The idea was we'd go to the Sunday service, Sunday morning church service, and then the labyrinth would be put out after the service. We knew it was going to have to be outside because there wasn't space inside for it. So the plan was I would check en route to see if everything was in order, and it was pouring with rain. The forecast was very, very bad. As I drove over the hill range into New Hampshire, there was snow on the ground, grey clouds. And I got to the church, it was still raining. It was not looking at all promising. We went through the service, came out, the rain had eased a bit. And I suggested at that point, well, why don't we lay it out just for 5 minutes? Don't want to really put it out for very much longer, otherwise it could get damaged in the rain. But the rain was sufficiently light at that point to just let them see it. And I suggested walking round the edge, not actually walking the labyrinth itself. Because I believe the labyrinth has a power that you can experience even without walking it. And then we'll pack it away before it gets damaged. So this is what we did. Of course, as soon as we had laid the labyrinth out, it stopped raining. People were able to walk it, packed it away. It started raining again. The number of times, I think it's happened 4 or 5 times, I put the labyrinth out in the wilds of Pennsylvania or somewhere like that, and an eagle would arrive from nowhere. And people don't believe me when I say this, but it really did. And it's true that these are areas where you do occasionally see eagles flying around. They're not particularly rare necessarily, but I would not have seen one driving along for many miles, and then suddenly one would appear and just start circling above the labyrinth. And I guess you can always find an explanation for that in terms of what was attracting it, but for me that was just absolutely magical.
Benediction, sort of.
And this connection with nature actually has become, which I didn't realize when I started this, as I was saying about the design of the labyrinth. It's a labyrinth that loves being outdoors and going to places where there aren't necessarily people. So there's some purpose beyond the people connection. I've had a little bit of exposure to the world of geomancy, this idea of connecting with the earth and earth healing and so on.
Yeah.
And it's come up quite a lot with some of the people I've met along the journey, people particularly with Native American backgrounds. So there's something beyond just the linking communities that the labyrinth is doing. And yes, it has a power, it has an energy that doesn't necessarily just involve people coming along at a set time to walk it with. Well, I think I've only had candles around my labyrinth once or twice, but in a very nice church setting type thing.
Yeah.
It's not just about that.
Yeah, I think the more you walk them out in nature, especially if they've been placed with thought and care, doused for the center, doused for the, you'll find that the energy is, many people, the dowsers for sure know it without a doubt, that they create, they alter the lays on the land. They because it's a design. It's a it's like a ruin, or the stones, or
Yes, yes,
the ching sticks, or anything like that. They are energetic tools,
absolutely.
and so beyond. That's why people uh, gravitate towards it, and why they become peaceful, why they become centered. What it's an energetic tool, whether they understand it or not. It is affecting them. So, yeah, and it sounds like this
And one
one
of the
is
great,
especially potent.
it is, and it's really, I mean, it's been important for me to reconnect as well with nature
Mm.
and out in the wilds quite a lot. Um, I should mention as well, is another important part of this journey is I have a finger labyrinth, which again is a beautiful piece of work that came from Lisa's fine hands,
Mm.
which is a very similar design to the main one, the Baltic design. And my experience with the finger labyrinth in the past, I like using finger labyrinths. I'd say, there are times when I'm very happy sitting with a finger labyrinth, even when I can go and physically walk a big one. But that had been the limit of my experience with them. This finger labyrinth also has, I believe, a real power, a real energy with it. It's very easy for me to bring it out. It doesn't need laying out. It can just be brought out very quickly. I can walk it very quickly with my finger. And I have a little routine, both with the finger labyrinth and with the larger labyrinth that I use when I'm holding the space. So I say very quietly what was called the metta prayer, the loving kindness prayer, which again goes across all religious traditions. May all beings dwell in the heart. May all be free of suffering. May all know their wholeness. May all be healed. May all be at peace. May all be happy. And why it's called the metta prayer is it starts, or it can start with something it can be yourself, or it can just be one person that you know very well, or it can be a tree that you're standing in front of, or a creature that you've just seen running by, and then grows. So when I've been in a town, it's typically been, let me start saying this prayer for all people in this building, in this church, for example, or in this school. In fact, I usually start with people walking the labyrinth and then go to the building, and then expand that to the area, the town or the city, and then perhaps to the county, and then perhaps to the state level. Or if there's something specific happening, for example, when I was in the Cleveland area, there were local elections happening the very next day. So offering this prayer for the candidates and people voting and organizing the event and so on. That's the routine I use in my own holding of the space, and that's done kind of in silence. So I'm sort of walking slowly around the outside of the labyrinth. But the finger labyrinth also offers that opportunity to kind of offer this and present it and put it down and make this geomantic, this kind of, if you can call it like an acupuncture for the earth, as you say, I don't understand the principles of dowsing and ley lines and so on, so I'm dealing with something which is I'm largely ignorant of, but I'm aware that that doesn't matter. You can still be used. You can still have a sense of where this is meant to be and let it do its work.
Yeah. And you can read about dowsing, and you can get a dowsing kit, and you can talk to Sig, and it's funny
yes, of course, yes.
There's the guy up in Patrick McManaway in Vermont. It's too bad that you couldn't connect with him, because I think he's but he's good. Anyway. But yeah. So there's a dowsing association, but that's easy to do.
Sure.
And that part is easy to do. So yeah. So, but you know what? It sounds to me, Clive, that I think you are the person who is supposed to be doing this. There's something about that you as a resident of Great Britain have taken this on to come across, and out of an impetus from the Houston gathering that happened at a difficult time in the United States history. It was a very difficult time, and you've created this labyrinth, and you to me, from what you say and how you're talking and your responses, your feminine side is very open. It's very equal
Yes.
to your masculine, and
Yes.
so it's no accident that you are the one doing this, that you are the one with the labyrinth, the color of the heart chakra, who is taking this around. So, and your reputation and what's gone so far. I mean, I have to say, in the labyrinth word, we're all dying to host you. So wherever you go, you will be put up and taken care of. I don't think you need to worry about that at all. If you come to Dallas, I'll set you up, and I'll have people.
Well,
So
I would love to do that. I think a part of the problem is that I mean, this isn't going to happen a lot. It will happen when I start again.
Yeah.
Of course, Kathy and Sadell and so on are great friends now, and I want to go and spend time with them. Yeah. So, of course, when you're on a journey like this, you've got to kind of keep on the move a little bit and heading in a new direction.
Yeah.
There are going to be unknowns. I mean, that's the thing. It's not always the case. I know every day where I'm going to be. That's really the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's going where feels right.
Yeah.
And also some of the Airbnb where I've had to fill in. I went back. There's a lovely lady called Luann in Angola, in Indiana, which is a wonderful place. I actually looped back because we were able to set up a wonderful labyrinth event there, and there are various other things that were set up for me and hosted in this fantastic town, a wonderful group of people. That was my Airbnb host, who is now a very good friend.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
So yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful talking about this, and it's very exciting what you're doing, and keep us posted, let us know. And are you going to be able to come to the gathering this year?
Well, I thought originally that I couldn't, because I originally had a commitment in the UK, which has now been cancelled. Oh. I think, sadly, I'm going to have to say no, simply because of costs, because it's around the time I'll be kicking off this other leg, and so to come to the West Coast and then back to the East Coast, and then 6 or 7 weeks on the road again, it would just stretch me a little bit too much at the moment. Or I'm very much hoping to come next year.
Yeah, to Minneapolis. Yeah. But maybe you could start on the West Coast, come down the West Coast, and then back. Anyway, just kidding, just kidding. Well, there's one other thing I want to ask you about. You just published a book about labyrinths. Labyrinth A to Omega. An introduction to how, what, and why of labyrinths and labyrinth walking. So it's available on audiobook. So not to change the subject so quickly, but we're over time, and it's great, and I don't.
Sure.
But tell us a little bit about that too, because I want you to let people know about it.
Sure. Well, that also came about when I was thinking about what can I offer? What can I take on? Not to take on the road with me, because I can't carry a lot, but point people to as a resource, particularly for people that don't have easy internet access. There's an awful lot on the web, which is available, of course, and TLS is wonderful in that respect. But I wanted something that was a little bit more than like a 2-page handout, that I usually have available at walks for people that were new, and particularly for those that came in late, so they could not have to ask too many questions and have something to take away, and there'd be a few website links on there. And thinking back to my own experience when I was introduced to the labyrinth, something that would be good, serve as a good, simple introduction. So this is quite a small book. It's almost pocket size. It's only about 100 pages, and it covers a very thumbnail sketch of labyrinth history and the appeal of labyrinths and different applications, and perhaps how to approach it and what to do about going about finding one or making one, and finger labyrinths and all sorts of other things like that. But also contains what I call the Labyrinth Resource Guide, which is a list of other books which cover these topics in much more detail and written by people that are much more knowledgeable than I am. So as a sort of starting point for people who come to walk, want something fairly quick and easy to read, to get a bit of a handle on what labyrinths are about. It's published in Spanish as well, because while there haven't been a lot of Spanish speakers on my route so far, I hope and anticipate there may well be further along the way. And yes, it's on Kindle, it's paperback and Audible. So putting it in those different formats to make it easily accessible.
Yeah. How long did it take you to do that? And when did you think that when did this idea come up?
Well, I think it really came up at the time I was putting the website together and trying to think about some of the logistics of doing this and having something to offer. So I wanted a book that covered quite a lot of bases, really, because there's a lot of very good books out there, of course, about labyrinths, and some are quite introductory and some are much more detailed. The way I write usually is to do some very intensive research. I'm very fortunate in the UK to be able to go to the British Library, where you can just order just about anything that's been written, and there it is. So you have, Jeff Sayward's full works on your table, this sort of thing.
Wow.
And then I suppose I write generally pretty quickly when I'm writing about something I love and passionate about, when I've done my homework and I don't know where I'm going. So that all came together pretty quickly. As I say, it's not a very long book. It's 25,000 words, something like that. So it's not take you an hour or two to read, probably.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has all been wonderful talking to you, Clive, and I really, I know you'll let the labyrinth lead the way, and whatever is meant to be will be. And I was at Houston and I saw you, and we spoke a little bit here and there, but we were both going in different directions at the same time.
There are so many people to catch up with there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's no one that came on to talk. So I'm just going to end our session. And it's really been such a pleasure sharing this hour plus with you. And thank you so much for joining me today, Clive.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
And many, many continued blessings on your path and pilgrimage.
Bless you.
Okay. So you've been listening to the Labyrinth Society's Many Paths, Many Visions, broadcast by Spreaker with your host, Christiana Brinton. Be sure to check the TLS website, Facebook page, global group, YouTube, and Google Plus sites for a list of upcoming dates and guests. Also, if this podcast has piqued your interest in the Labyrinth Society and you'd like more information about membership, please go to www.labyrinthsociety.org/membership. Ciao, namaste, and may you find what you need on your path through life.